Well, we are talking about a new exoskeleton making a difference in patients' lives. Take a listen to how it's already helping patients.
Over the past 5 months of using HAL, I felt myself getting closer to walking with every session. That'll drastically help because if I can walk, I can do so much more for myself.
Well, you were looking at a system called HAL, but it's moving testimony from a patient using the exoskeleton powered by the user's intentions. So this new tool could be a game changer in the medical field. And joining us now from Rise Healthcare Group to tell us more about the hybrid assistive limb, or HAL, as I've been referring to, we have David Bailey as well as Hiroki Kimura. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. David, if you could explain quickly what an exoskeleton is and what we mean by the user's intentions or the patient's intentions to move their muscles.
Absolutely. So first of all, the exoskeleton is a wearable device, as you saw in the video, that is attached to the body, specifically in the region where there's need. And once the device is attached, we have these electrodes that are hooked up to the skin that essentially are designed to sense the intentional signal from the brain to the intended area in the body. So what makes that unique is the machine is then activated by that intention. Once that activation occurs, the machine is able to move, and then that reflex loop, that loop back and forth between the brain's intention move and the movement itself starts to feed the neurological system and create what we call neuroplasticity. So essentially what that means is if there's damage to that pathway, this machine can help strengthen the signals along that pathway and improve overall function.
And the damage that you're talking about, that signal from our brain to our muscles, typically comes from either disease or injury.
Absolutely.
Right? And so this is part of what would be traditionally physical therapy for a patient.
Exactly.
How does it work logistically? I mean, I know this is one of the newest devices, maybe 3 or 4 locations in Southern California that are leading the way in this exoskeleton system, but is this covered by insurance? I mean, how would a patient be able to have access to a system like HAL?
So great question. So yes, it's partially covered by insurance. We also have cash pay as well. So right now we're working through the system. We have our FDA clearance to utilize it clinically, and then we're working along a process to work on a CPT code to get full insurance coverage for it.
And then what kind of progress? I mean, we saw that testimonial. Is it only while you're using the device, or does that pathway from your brain to your muscles continue to develop once you stop using the exoskeleton?
That's a great question. I will say that what really excited me about this device was the fact that once this device is removed, those changes are maintained over time, especially with practice. So rather than just being an assistive device that allows you to move around and walk on a daily basis, that neuroplasticity, that maintains that functional improvements over a period of time. And for us as therapists, it's very exciting because it augments everything else that we're already doing in the clinic itself.
So ideally, the end game is that pathway is repaired.
To an extent. If not repaired, at least the signal is strengthened through what's remaining, and overall function can improve from that.
Okay. Hiroki, I know you're going to demonstrate a little bit of how HAL works for us.
Yes, absolutely.
Explain what you're going to show us
Sure.
here.
So, traditionally exoskeletons, you can imagine these are robots that move based on different commands. And so a lot of controllers are often used to move them. But this one is unique in that it's used based on the intention that I want to move. So when I turn it on, because I have electrodes attached to the muscles on my legs, when I move my leg, the robot also moves. It's entirely based on my intent to move, right? And so if you imagine a patient wearing this with a spinal cord injury or stroke that have difficulty moving, when they try to move, the robot helps them make that movement, and that creates that feedback back to the brain to create that neuroplastic response.
What I found so interesting is that it's signals coming from our skin.
Yes.
How does that work? If you can dumb it down for us.
Sure. I mean, I have electrodes, sticker-type electrodes, so they're non-invasive, and they're just stuck on the muscles that control the movement of your legs. And the robot is reading the signals that your brain sends to those muscles from that surface of the skin. And based on those signals, I can make adjustments with how it reads that, what kind of signals to respond to, and again, that's how we train the patient to produce good signals, so that when the robot's not on them, they're still able to improve the way they walk.
What type of progress have you seen from a patient that can't do something to a patient that can? I mean, what type of progress do you typically see?
It varies, usually based on diagnosis, the level of injury, like the severity of the injury or the disease itself, where they are in their path. But what we do see is that over a long enough period of time, we'll see some net gains, some net improvements overall. So something as simple as just being able to walk from one part of the house to another rather than using their walker, maybe a cane, or in some incidents, an individual being able to get from their house to their car a lot easier. This also helps with reducing risks of fall. So it's so varied. It depends so much on the patient themselves and the level. The great thing about it is that if the machine itself can pick up the signal, then we can get them on the machine, and that machine, there'll be some amount of change that if someone has had a chronic disease for 10 years, even just the slightest improvement, 5–10% of speed of walking can really help their overall function in their ambulation.
And that comes from what, 30 minutes with HAL a week, 5 hours? I mean, what are we talking as far as
generally a couple hours a week? Each session, the initial session is about a 2-hour session, and then after that the follow-ups are usually about an hour and a half, and it's really dependent on how much the patient can tolerate. And then a couple of times a week, 2 to 3 times a week. We also have individuals that will come in from other states that will fly in and do intensives, so 2 weeks at a time for one treatment session a day for 5 days for 2 weeks straight, and we see some great changes from that as well.
Well, I mean, this is pretty cutting edge. It's one of the only places in the country where it's available.
The only place you can get it. That's right.
That's fantastic that we have this here in San Diego. Thank you so much for bringing it in and sharing it with us. How can people learn more about it or find out more about you guys?
Great. Go to risehealthcaregroup.com, and up there's all the information. We have testimonials, videos, and we have information. You can access us anytime you like, email, phone. Give us a call, and we can get you set up.
All right. Hiroki, one more time.
Sure.
Just for good measure. I mean, HAL wants to be a part of it. That's pretty impressive. Fantastic technology. Thank you both so much.
Thanks so much for having us.